design ideas by using a storyboard. Storyboards have two main purposes. The first is for the designer themselves to really understand how the story plays out visually. And the other purpose is to use the storyboard as a tool to communicate those design ideas to your other collaborators. The storyboard will feature moments in the story which come under three main headings. The first of which is each separate act. Each of these acts are then separated into separate scenes, and our storyboard will feature each of those separate scenes. As well as those separate scenes, the storyboard can also feature bigger moments. A moment where your design does a particularly brilliant thing, looks particularly beautiful, or is lit in a very special way. I'm going to look at Act 2 and Scene 1 of a ballet called Swan Lake. So we'll take our card and we'll write Act 2, Scene 1 on the back. And then just a brief description. So here we have a lakeside clearing in a forest, and most importantly it's by the ruins of an old chapel. Now that's mainly for the designer's reference, so you know exactly what it is that picture is showing you at a later date. So turn the card over, and this is our window, which we will show what our audience is seeing in that particular moment on stage. So if you imagine that four sides of the card are the four different sides of the window of the proscenium arch in the theatre. So what we draw on here will be exactly what we think the audience will be seeing in that particular moment on stage. In this particular moment, in the clearing, Siegfried, he approaches the lake in a forest. Now, I want to start by drawing out a shape really quickly that'll show a lake, very simply, and it's surrounded by forests. So my design has a forest that you can see around the sides. Now I'm going to work really quickly and probably quite messily to some people's eyes, but to mine, I know exactly what I'm trying to say. Now when you do this, I think it's really important that you remember an exercise that you've done previously where you were responding to the music of the piece, and you put marks down on a piece of paper that kind of showed how the music sounded. And that's what I'm going to try and do here. I'm going to try and remember what that music sounds like and what those shapes that I then draw look like. So I've got a very kind of intimidating forest, very spiky, very jauntily, and very jagged in the corners and around the side. And in the background, I'm going to draw a bit of a horizon line, again working really quickly. And in the distance I can see some other trees, so I'm going to rough those in just on the horizon in the distance. So there we've got our background, we've got our lake, and we've got the surrounding forest and the creepy trees. And the other thing that the storyboard says, let's just check on the other side, it's by the ruins of an old chapel, and that's quite key to the story. So somewhere in this picture the audience needs to see the ruins of that chapel. So if I just put that in towards the back of the stage, but so in a clear position where the audience can see it. Okay, so now we have our scene. We have what we think the audience will see when they look through the proscenium opening. Of course, the one thing that's missing are any performers, and that's really important in the storyboard. As well as having the background, as well as the set, you need to see how the performers will look against that set. So just very quickly, rough in your performers, where you think they will stand, and if they're integral to that scene and how the scene will play out, draw that in as well. So here I have a number of ballet dancers. They're going to help form the shape of a lake. So I'm going to quickly use stickmen to show you what those ballet dancers might look like. Okay, so that's probably all the drawing done. Now I'd use some very basic colour as well, just to help us to get a bit more feeling of mood, a bit more atmosphere in the picture. But I wouldn't get too detailed with it. It's just for you to get a bit of a sense of it. Most ballets, operas and theatre are broken up into sections called acts, and within the acts there are other sections called scenes. Now I've focused the viewing window of the storyboard to just a part of the stage. So unlike the previous design, where we're looking at the entire stage, here now we've closed the 4 sides down to the top right-hand side of the theatre. And I've done that because in this scene, that's the area that I'm really most concerned with. And here we see the ruins of the chapel, and we see the sky behind it, and the moon in the background. And there we have the dead figure in the light, lying on the floor, downstage of the archway. And what I'm particularly interested in is framing that moment. So this is information for me, and also for the director as well, to communicate an idea that during that part of the ballet, I want to see quite a focused image of this figure in a very stark light, and a very dramatic part of the stage. So I think that storyboard is very clear and conveys that idea really